The morning I finally had peace was the morning they took it away from me. My daughter-in-law had turned my son against me 12 years ago, and he let her. They stopped taking my calls, moved without leaving an address, and when my wife was dying in a hospital bed in Chattanooga, I sat with her alone. No son, no grandchild, just me and the sound of machines and a chaplain who didn't know our names. I buried my wife in March and stood at her grave in the rain, and I thought, this is what it costs to love people who don't love you back. But then my roofing company sold, and everything changed. If you have ever worked 40 years at something people overlooked, if you have ever been written off as just a tradesman, just a working man, and then watched the people who wrote you off come looking for what you built, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what city you are watching from. My name is Weldon Cruz. I am 64 years old. This is what happened when my son and his wife drove up my new driveway with 6 suitcases and a plan. I had been standing on the back porch of my property in the hill country outside Knoxville that morning. 3 acres, a workshop out back, a house without a single sagging beam. I had sold Cruz Roofing and Construction 8 months earlier for $11 million. 41 years of pre-dawn mornings, and hands that never quite got clean in putting other people's roofs over other people's heads. And now I had a roof of my own that nobody could threaten. I heard a vehicle on the gravel before I saw it. A large silver SUV coming up the drive slow, like it wasn't sure of its welcome. I set my coffee mug on the railing. My son climbed out first. He was 39, and he looked every year of it. His shoulders were caved in a way that had nothing to do with posture. His eyes found me, and then slid away. That old habit from when he was 12 and had done something he already knew I wouldn't forgive. My daughter-in-law got out next. She didn't look at me. She was looking at the house, at the acreage, at the detached garage, scanning it the way a developer scans a parcel, calculating, assessing, pricing. She was wearing clothes that cost more than my first truck. She hadn't changed at all. Then from the back seat came a girl I almost didn't recognize. My granddaughter was 15. The last time I had held her, she was 3 years old and had fallen asleep on my shoulder at her grandmother's birthday. I would have known those eyes anywhere, same as her grandmother's. But the rest of her was wrong. Too thin, too pale. The way she moved across the gravel, carefully, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible, that wasn't how a teenager should move. She looked at me from across the yard and she didn't smile. She looked like she was afraid of what I was going to say. My daughter-in-law spoke first. She always had. "Weldon," she said, walking toward me with her arms open like I was supposed to be grateful. "Look at this place. You have been holding out on us." I didn't hug her. I stood at the top of my porch steps and said, "What are you doing here?" She laughed, that light, dismissive sound I had always hated. "Is that any way to greet your family? We have been driving since 5 this morning." She turned back to the SUV. "Brett, get the bags." My son started unloading luggage, not 1 bag, not 2, 6 large cases and a duffel the size of a body bag. "You are not staying," I said. My daughter-in-law tilted her head and looked at me with something between pity and amusement. "Weldon, don't be like that. We've had time to reflect, all 3 of us, and life is too short for grudges. We want to be here for you." "You weren't here for my wife's funeral," I said. 7 years ago. Neither of you came." She didn't flinch. "We were in a difficult place ourselves. You know how it is." I looked past her at my granddaughter, standing slightly behind her mother, both hands gripping the strap of her backpack, knuckles pale. She caught me looking. "Papa Weld," she said. Her voice was barely audible. Those 2 words walked right through every wall I had built in 12 years of silence. "Come inside," I said. I looked at my son and my daughter-in-law. "The 2 of you can wait on the porch." My daughter-in-law gave a short, tolerant laugh and walked past me through my front door. My son followed with the luggage, scraping the door frame on his way in. I stood there a moment with my hand on the door, then I went inside. The next 2 hours were an education in the particular kind of cruelty that wears the clothes of normalcy. My daughter-in-law toured my house without being invited, opening cabinet doors, testing faucet pressure, running a finger along the windowsills. She asked whether the property taxes were manageable, whether I had had the well tested, whether I had refinanced or paid outright. She phrased every question as concern. Not one of them was, I made dinner because my granddaughter looked like she hadn't eaten a full meal in days. While I cooked, my daughter-in-law sat at my kitchen table and told me about their last few years. How hard it had been, how the business climate had changed, how they'd had setbacks that weren't their fault. She used the word setbacks 6 times. She never used the words mistake or sorry even once. After dinner, my son helped me clear the table. At one point we were both at the sink and he said, very quietly without looking at me, "I know this isn't how you wanted this to go." He stopped there. I waited. He walked away. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the dark listening to footsteps in my hallway, to the low murmur of voices through a closed door. I could not make out words. I did not need to. My granddaughter found me on the back porch at 5:45 the next morning, still dark except for the first gray light along the ridge. She came and sat in the other chair without a word. We looked at the tree line together for a while. Then she said, "They are still asleep. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just keep looking at those trees and listen." I looked at the trees. "Go ahead," I said. What she told me over the next 10 minutes rewrote everything I thought I knew about why they had come. My son had lost close to $400,000 over the past 18 months. Online gambling, sports betting. A spiral that started when they shut down the dry cleaning franchise they had owned and went looking for ways to make it back fast. He had borrowed from 2 private lenders to cover the losses, and those lenders had sold the paper to a man who operated through a company called Meridian Asset Solutions. The debt was now $460,000 with penalties, and the man who held it was not patient. 2 months before they showed up on my driveway, a representative of this man had come to their apartment. My daughter-in-law was home alone. The man had been perfectly civil. He sat in her kitchen and drank a glass of water and mentioned that there were alternative arrangements for people who couldn't pay cash. He looked at a photograph of my granddaughter on the wall while he said it. "She told me I was being dramatic," my granddaughter said. Her voice was perfectly level, which was somehow worse than if she had cried. "Then last month she told me I had a dinner to attend. A friend of someone named Dell. She said he was 42 and very established and I should make a good impression." She paused. When I said no, she said I was being selfish. She said the family needed me to think about something other than myself for once. I kept my hand still on the arms of my chair. "They brought me here partly to keep me away from that situation until they figure out another solution," she continued. "The other solution is you. They want to get control of your finances before you understand what you are signing. Mom has a lawyer friend who can draw up the papers fast, and she has pills, little white ones in a brown bottle. I have seen her use them on Dad when he gets too upset to be managed. She said last night she is going to put one in your coffee at dinner so the signing goes smooth." I looked at her then, at this girl with her grandmother's eyes and her too thin wrists and the specific kind of calm that comes not from peace but from having been frightened so long that fear becomes background noise. "You did the right thing telling me," I said. "Now I need you to go back inside and act normal. Can you do that for a few more days?" "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I am going to handle it," I said, "and when it is done, you are never going to have to be afraid of any of this again." "They are serious," Papa wailed. "So am I," said, "and I have had more practice." I watched her go back inside. Then I sat alone on my porch until the birds started up and the ridge caught the first real light, and I let the cold anger settle in my chest the way concrete settles when you pour it right, solid, level, and permanent. I made 3 calls that morning. The first was to Odell, my former foreman, the man who had run my crews for 22 years and was the most unflappable human being I had ever worked beside. I told him what I needed. He was quiet for a moment. "You want me to be the bad news," he said. "Yes," I said, "as convincing as you can manage." "Weldon," he said, "I have been delivering bad news to homeowners for 30 years. I think I can handle it." The second call was to my attorney, a woman named Vicky Alderson, who had handled the sale of my company and who understood precisely what I meant when I said I wanted to purchase a debt instrument without the current debtor knowing who the buyer was. She found the note by end of business. An all-cash offer to Meridian Asset Solutions, accepted the same afternoon. By that evening, my son's debt had a new owner, me. The third call was to my neighbor 2 properties down. A man who had retired from the circuit court bench after 30 years and had become a genuine friend in the month since I'd moved in. I told him I needed him and his wife for dinner 2 nights out. I told him he might find it interesting. He said he had been retired long enough that interesting sounded about right. Odell called me back the following afternoon while my daughter-in-law was in the kitchen. I answered loudly. I let my voice go ragged. I gripped the counter so my knuckles went. I told Odell I didn't understand. I had used a reputable firm. I had done everything right. And now the IRS was saying there was an irregularity with the sale price, and the $11 million was frozen pending a full review. When I hung up, I stood at the counter with my head down and breathed like a man absorbing a blow. My daughter-in-law came around the island. She put her hand on my arm. Her fingers were cold. "What's happened?" she said. I looked up at her with what I hoped read as shock and confusion. "The auditors," I said. "They found something. I don't know what. I might lose. I don't know how much. Maybe half." I shook my head slowly. "I just need to sit down." She guided me to a kitchen chair. With the other hand, she reached for her phone. She thought I was looking at the floor. I was watching her face in the window reflection above the sink. I watched grief for money she hadn't gotten yet move through her expression like weather, followed immediately by a new calculation about what might still be within reach before everything fell apart. She left the room. I sat at the table and I waited. The dinner 2 nights later was her suggestion. She had ordered good food from a restaurant 40 minutes away and set my table with a cloth I did not know I owned. Her lawyer friend, a man named Rand, who arrived at 6:30 with a briefcase and the well-practiced manner of someone accustomed to rooms he probably shouldn't be in, sat to her left and placed his case carefully beside his chair. Odell and his wife arrived at the same time I had arranged, followed 5 minutes later by my neighbor the judge and his wife. My daughter-in-law looked at them the way you look at something that has arrived in the wrong place. "Weldon, who are these people?" "People I trust," I said. "Please sit down." We sat. Dinner was served. My daughter-in-law managed her composure through the meal, though I watched her watching Rand, waiting for the moment. After the plates were cleared and the coffee was poured, coffee I had made myself from my own pot, which had not left my sight, Rand opened his briefcase. He laid out 2 documents, power of attorney, a trust agreement structured in a way I could see immediately, would transfer management of my assets to my son and his wife within 60 days. He explained them using the language of protection and simplification, the particular language people use when they want to take something and call it a gift. "Just your signature here and here," Rand said. He produced a pen. "Nothing to worry about. Standard procedure for someone in your position." I looked at the papers for a long moment. Then I folded my hands on the table and said, "Before I sign anything, I want to share something with everyone here." My daughter-in-law's expression shifted. 3 days ago," I said, "I purchased the promissory note held by a company called Meridian Asset Solutions. The note represents $460,000 in debt owed by my son, penalties included." I looked at Rand, which makes these documents largely irrelevant, since their primary purpose was to route funds toward a debt that I now hold. The table was quiet. "I also want to mention that Tennessee is a one-party consent state," I continued, "which means any recording made in a private residence with the resident present is entirely legal." I reached back and picked up the small recorder I had placed on the bookshelf that morning. "I have lived in this house for 8 months. There are quite a few conversations on this device." My daughter-in-law stood up. Her chair scraped the floor. "Sit down," my neighbor the judge said. "He said it the way you say it when you have said it from a bench for 3 decades. She sat. "I am not going to play the recordings tonight," I said. "I don't need to. Everyone at this table has now heard me describe what is on them, and Rand here is a licensed attorney in this state, which means he understands what evidentiary weight they carry." I looked at Rand. He was already closing his briefcase. "I am not going to pursue any of this legally, provided that certain conditions are met before this dinner ends." My daughter-in-law opened her mouth. I held up one hand. "First condition. My granddaughter stays with me, not temporarily. Legal guardianship, signed tonight, witnessed by everyone present. She finishes high school here, in a school I will drive her to on Monday morning. She goes to college if she chooses. The arrangement that was being discussed with Dell's associate is finished. Tonight. Permanently. At the far end of the table, my granddaughter sat very still. She was watching me with an expression that was not fear. It was something I recognized from a long time ago. It was the look of someone who has decided to trust you completely. Second condition. You both leave this property by 8 tomorrow morning. 1 year of no contact with either of us. After that, if she wants to reach out to you, that is her choice and hers alone, made freely, without pressure. My son had not spoken since I started. He was looking at the tablecloth. I watched something move across his face that I recognized as shame, the real kind, not performed, the look a man gets when he cannot argue with the facts of what he has done. My daughter-in-law looked around the table, at Odell, steady and entirely unimpressed, at Vicky Alderson, who had arrived quietly during dinner and was sitting to one side with a leather folder, at my neighbor, who had the patient expression of a man who had seen considerably worse and remained standing through all of it. She looked at Rand, who was studying the window. "You planned all of this," she said. Her voice had lost its edges. It sounded for the first time like she was genuinely afraid. "I built a business for 41 years, I said. What did you think I was doing with my time?" She reached for the pen. She held it over the first document for a long moment, staring at the page. Then she signed with the quick, violent motion of someone who wants to be finished with something they cannot escape. She pushed the pages across the table without looking at me. My son signed without reading. He looked at his daughter once, just once, when the pen was in his hand. She looked back at him. I could not tell you what passed between them in that moment, and I did not try to interpret it. Some things exist between two people in ways that have no room for anyone else, even someone who loves them. Rand witnessed both signatures. Vicky Alderson countersigned as my attorney. My neighbor the judge witnessed the final page. When it was done, the room was very quiet. "I think dinner is finished," I said. By 8 the next morning, the silver SUV was gone. I stood at my kitchen window and watched it back down the drive and turn onto the county road and disappear between the trees. And I felt something leave with it, not just them, but the weight I had been carrying since a March morning 7 years ago when I stood at a grave in the rain with no one beside me. The weight of being owed something you have convinced yourself you might still collect, of waiting for an apology that was never going to come in a form you could use. I had stopped waiting, and stopping, it turned out, was the thing that finally set me free. My granddaughter was at the kitchen table eating toast. She had color in her face that had not been there 5 days ago. She was wearing a flannel shirt of mine that fit her like a tent, and she had her hair pulled back, and she looked, for the first time since she had arrived, like a 15-year-old should look on a weekday morning. "So what happens now?" she asked. I poured my coffee and sat down across from her. "Monday morning I drive you to the school 15 minutes from here and we get you enrolled. After that, 1 day at a time." I looked at her. "You ever used power tools?" She thought about it. "A drill once. I put a shelf up in my room when I was 12 because nobody else was going to do it." "Good foundation," I said. She smiled. The first real smile I had seen from her. It was her grandmother's smile exactly, and it landed somewhere in my chest I had not expected. "The workshop out back is yours too," I said, "whenever you want. I can teach you how to read a blueprint, how to price a job, how to run the numbers on a bid. And school comes first. You graduate, and if you want to go to college, we make that happen. But whatever you want to learn after hours, I have got 41 years of it and I am not in any rush." I looked out at the workshop roof, catching the morning sun. "Offer stands as long as you want it." She looked out the window at the small building with its tin roof. She considered it the way her grandmother used to consider things, quietly, without hurry, not committing until she was certain. "Yeah," she said, "I'd like that." We sat there together in the quiet kitchen while the coffee cooled and the light moved up the ridge, and the morning opened up ahead of us, like a job site before the crew arrives, full of work still to be done, and all the time in the world to do it right. I spent my entire working life being underestimated, by clients who assumed rough hands meant a simple mind, by competitors who bet that a small operation could not outlast a bigger one, and at the end by a woman who walked into my house and saw nothing but a target. They all made the same mistake. They counted what I had, and thought that was all there was to know about me. They never asked what I was. If you believe justice was served here, hit the like button and subscribe to Revenge Saga. Leave me a comment. Do you think I went too easy on my son? Or did he get exactly what he had earned? I read every single one. Until next time, look after the ones who cannot look after themselves, and never let anyone count you out before the job is finished.